So in this video, I'm just going to show you how to really quickly style a synthetic mustache into a handlebar mustache. So as you can see from the one side that I've done, this side I already went through and I pinned it into place. This is like one of my favorite methods for styling handlebar mustaches, even if they are human hair, and I can use a Marcel iron on them or like a small curling iron. I just feel like by pinning them into place and like putting product into them and putting like a light coat of hairspray over it, it just really makes such a difference in like how well it holds up, just because even with like curling hair's really not going to want to stay in this sort of a direction. So it's just nice to have something that kind of just like forces it into that shape. So once I first learned how to do this on an internship, I've pretty much been doing it like this ever since. So what I like to do personally is I like to take hair gel and I either use my hands or I use like a little like toothbrush or a little like, this is technically for cake mascara to apply it. I'll use this and kind of comb through some gel through it. Sometimes I take a little bit of mustache wax too, and I'll kind of run that on the ends, but I usually like to use the mustache wax like more as like a finishing touch. So like once I let this dry, which I typically like to do overnight. If not, I would give it a couple of hours just to like set up. So I wouldn't do this and then try to put it on somebody like 5 minutes later. It's a good idea to let like the hair gel and then the hairspray kind of like soak into it, I guess, for lack of better words. And then kind of do it. So the most important thing when you are doing this is you want to get it pinned down. So this is a handlebar mustache that I made, and I split it and built it in 2 separate pieces. I'm pretty sure I did build it like that. Otherwise you can't just like cut it in half once you're ready to use it. I always feel like it's easier for people to talk on stage if their mustaches are cut in half. So this one was just like a personal project for me. It wasn't necessarily anything that's ever going to see a stage, maybe photos for fun. I really just use it for demos like this and for classes, just because it's pink and purple, so I feel like that makes things like a little bit more entertaining. And this one is synthetic, so I wouldn't be able to put any kind of heat on it. Like I believe like the purple hair might be human, but the pink is definitely not. So since I don't want to melt it, I had to find another way to style it. So I went back to this way that I learned at Cirque du Soleil when I internshipped on Mystère in college. One of the characters there had a handlebar mustache, and he really liked it when his mustache was like actually very, very stiff, because I think it just made him feel more comfortable in it and like it wasn't going to come off. So you want to also like know that when you're styling it, because if you put like too much gel and too much hairspray, somebody might feel like it's like kind of crunchy. So I usually don't like overdo it. I mean, like that was like one person who that was like how he personally preferred it to be, so that's how we did it. But usually until somebody like tells me something like that, I don't like cake it with product, just because if it's like too solid on somebody's face, it's going to be really hard for them to emote. He wasn't doing any kind of talking on stage, he just needed it to stay on while he performed, but for somebody who might be like singing or talking, they're going to need it to stay flexible. So don't overload it with so much product that somebody can't move, but there needs to be enough so that you can have this shape. So I thought I would have the one side to kind of show you what like the finished product is, and then I'm going to do this side as a demo. So your first step is to pin down all your lace, like I started saying before I went on a tangent. This has been through a lot, so there is not much lace left to pin down. Luckily I was smart and I did kind of leave myself some at like the under layers of it, so I can kind of pin a little bit of this down, and you can see some of it already came loose already, because like I said, this thing was not meant for a show. It's really just like a personal project of mine, so it's going to be trashed, and that's fine because it doesn't need to be anything special. So like I said, your first step is going to be running, I personally like just hair gel. I have like this like massive tub of hair gel from Sally's that I love. I put it in like a little Tupperware container so that I can travel with it. I love this stuff. They have like a couple different versions of it. I've used a few different versions of it. It works great for styling facial hair and for just regular hair too. I love this stuff. This not that expensive from what I can remember, and one tub is going to last you like forever. So I really recommend this. You don't have to buy super expensive product whenever you're styling things. It just needs to be something that works well. So like I said, you can either use like, since this is like my own personal mustache, and it's like if it's going to go on anyone, it's probably just going to go on my face at this point, but really once I'm done styling it, I'm just going to wash it back out. My hands are sanitized, but I'm going to go in and probably just brush it through with my hands. But if this was something that I was going to immediately put on someone else, I really wouldn't want my hands to be all over it and touching it. So I would probably comb through the gel with like a little bit of like a little comb like this, or even something like this might be too big. It might be better with like a little like disposable mascara wand or like a smaller makeup brush. But since this is my own and it's not going to go anywhere, I'm just going to take gel on my hands and do it. So the first step, so I'm kind of coming at this from like a weird angle, so it's a little bit tricky. So something I haven't done yet that I really need to do is like block my block. Like I really wish this was covered in plastic. I just haven't done it yet, but every time anything wet gets on this, it's kind of like messing up like the integrity of the block, I guess, to be fancy with what I'm saying. So it's always a good idea to kind of like protect it, but you can see that just like that little bit of gel is really helping all of that hair kind of fall back into place. So this is something that if you are gluing this down on somebody, you might have to do this every single time that they wear it, because you are probably going to be washing all of the product out when you are hitting it with like that 99% alcohol. So that's why it's good to find methods like this that you can kind of do. It doesn't take a long time, so things that you can do quickly, because this is something that you're probably going to have to do a lot. So once you get to like this point of it, it's pretty saturated, but it's not so saturated that I don't feel like it's going to move on somebody's face. You want to start pinning it down. So I've got like my nice little magnetic pin tray, and I've got my little like quilter's pins. And so I'm kind of coming at this from a weird angle, so it might be a little off from how the other one is, but I usually start pinning it like on this part, so that it kind of just like forms it into the shape that I want, and you'll probably have to like manipulate it and go back and forth until it's the shape that you want. But you can see like these pins, because my lace is so short here, I really didn't want to put these through it because I feel like they're too big, so that's why I do have like these smaller kind of like little like silver pins. That's what I really prefer for facial hair, just because otherwise I really feel like it ends up like damaging the lace and it's just like too much. So again, I'm kind of coming at this from like a weird angle, so it might be a little bit off compared to the other one, but you can kind of see you just sort of like scoop it in place. So I don't really mind using my hands for like this part of it if I'm just like scooping it. I just don't want to like coat my hands in it and like be touching it if it's gonna go like immediately on someone's face. But since it's just for this demo, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but you certainly could have like taken something like this and just sort of brushed it through. Sometimes too, if there's like little hairs that are sticking up, I'll even take like a pin and sort of like brush it through that way. And so you kind of just go through and like find like a balance. So it's looking a little different from the other side, but again, since I'm not doing this like straight on, it's a little bit tricky, but I think you can kind of get the basic idea of it here, and you can kind of see that it's starting to form that shape. They were made like slightly differently, I think, too, so they do kind of have like a slightly different shape, because again, I just kind of like made up a pattern and did this one day, but they're a handlebar, it works. But you can see like kind of what I just did at that point is I start to cross them at 1.2, just because that kind of helps it really keep that thin shape, because you can kind of see like on this side that it really thins out, and that's like how most handlebar mustaches are going to be. So by kind of like crossing the pins, that's kind of like forcing it to stay in line. And so I also have a wig blocked onto this, so it's really just sort of like a very interesting look all the way around here. And so I think I have them curving at slightly different parts, but that's something where if you're not doing it from the side and you're actually facing it straight on, it's a little bit easier to not make choices like that. I won't say mistakes, because it's not a mistake, it's just a design choice, because we like to talk positively here. And again, if I kind of feel like my ends aren't staying together as nicely as I would like them to, take a teeny bit more gel. So that's one spot where if it's just like it's that small, you probably do have to use your hands. So of course, just always make sure that they're sanitized. I always have like hand sanitizer. If I don't have hand sanitizer, I will spray my hands down with straight alcohol if there's not a sink available for me to wash my hands. And even if I do wash my hands, I usually still like alcohol or hand sanitize them too. So you always want to make sure that you're staying as sanitary as possible when you're doing stuff like this. And again, so I'm just kind of going through, and it's sort of like you go back and forth from like side to side, and then you kind of just like pin it into this exact shape that you are looking for. And you can do this on a styrofoam block if you have to, since you're not going to hit it with any heat. It's totally fine to do that. I will usually style like multiple facial hair pieces on one block for shows, just because it's hard to have enough blocks sometimes, depending on the theater that you're working at. So that's like certainly okay to do. Let's see. and a lot of times like you end up with like, I don't know, I bend every pin that I have really, really badly. So with stuff like this, sometimes the bends help you because they'll kind of like catch it at an angle that you might not have been able to catch before. So they look a little different just because I'm kind of coming at this from different angles here, but hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. I think it's like one of the simplest methods for styling, but it was something that took me like 2 years of being in school before I ever learned it. I feel like it looks really like tedious because of how many like pins I have in it and everything. But honestly, like I have not found kind of like, not necessarily like better, because I think everybody has things that they prefer and that they're going to think are better, but I feel like consistency wise, other than the fact that these are obviously not too consistent shapes, but when you're facing it correctly, consistency wise, I feel like this really helps me keep things consistent because it kind of always goes back into the same shape. And especially too, if you like only leave yourself a certain amount of pins on your block, it's always going to go back into that shape because you only have so many pins. So I do this all the time for synthetic hair. I do this for like this like Christmas festival that I work where there's some facial hair for some of my actors there. I did this, like I said, at like Cirque du Soleil. I did this at school, Shakespeare festivals that I worked. So really it's something that I think it works great. It works on human hair too, so don't feel like it's something you just have to do for synthetic hair. It can certainly work for human as well. So once you're happy with the shape of it and where it's pinned, I always like to hit it with hairspray. I'm not going to do that so it doesn't end up all over my phone and everything, because you want to make sure that if you have any like phones or like glasses or anything like that, hairspray is going to put a coat over it, just like an aerosol setting spray or any kind of aerosol product would. So always make sure you move that stuff out of the way. Again, if you can get an unscented hairspray, probably your performer is going to love you for that, just because if you have something that's like super heavily scented and it's right under their nose, that could get really irritating to them. I've had people complain about it. I know you don't always have a choice of what products are around, but at least if you can get something that's not super like floral, people will probably appreciate that. I usually go with Tresemme, not always unscented, but for this kind of stuff, I think it holds up really nicely and it's not super expensive either. But yeah, so hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Once this is dry, you would just be able to pull all the pins out. And again, that's when I would probably take a little bit of mustache wax. Can't say that very easily, huh? Or Zwerbel paste if you like to pretend like you can speak German like I do, because my Krylon mustache wax is in German. You just take a little bit of that and like rub it between your fingers, and then you can run it right on the ends. Or if I end up with any like crazy flyaways or anything, I'll sometimes smooth it like that as well. But again, I like to do that once it's dry, and that's sort of like my last step. And then sometimes even when people have it on, they can kind of take a little bit and curl it like that as well, just because I feel like, at least like the mustache wax I work with, I feel like it's a little bit better on like actual facial hair as far as like holding up, just because I feel like a natural facial hair is going to want to hold a shape a little bit better than something I'm gluing onto somebody's face, probably just because it's actually growing out of their face, so it has more to like anchor to. So I really do think you need just like hair gel, hairspray, and then use a mustache wax for your finishing touch. But yeah, so that's a little bit on how to style a handlebar mustache, or really any kind of mustache, because if it was just something that you needed to be like flat and in shape, you can use pins to kind of style it any way that you need to. It's just a way to like control the hair. So yeah, so hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into what styling ventilated facial hair without heat is like.